Okay, we're live. Welcome. I have two special guests today, Franco Terrazzano from the Tax Federation and Stacey Kauder. Hopefully I said it correctly. She's also the one that actually facilitated this entire thing. So thank you so much, Stacey. We're going to have a great discussion today. What the best part is I wanted to go live so that you out there are able to ask your questions to Franco or myself or Stacey. We want you to be part of the discussion. We're going to start off with 30 minutes of panel discussion. Then we're going to do 15 minutes of Q&A. If I don't have all the Q&A, that's okay because I got lots of questions for Franco. So hopefully he's ready. Go ahead and introduce yourself, Franco, to the people that might not know who you are.
Well, hey, I just want to say thanks so much for doing this. It's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah, I'm Franco. I'm the federal director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. We're a pretty scrappy grassroots organization, been around for many years now. We fight for three, I would say simple but very powerful ideas, which is lower taxes, less government waste, and more accountability from governments to taxpayers. So, we've been scrapping away for a very long time, pushing for taxpayers, because too many times in government, you have too many lobbyists, too many bureaucrats, too many politicians wanting to raise taxes and waste people's money. And we're the group there saying, no, spend less, stop wasting other people's money.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm getting some audio, so I'm just going to make sure everything's good for the audio. Is the audio good for everybody out there?
I can hear you great.
I can hear Franco.
Perfect. Okay, let's ask the first question, Franco. So before we get into what's broken, I want to know where the wins are. So, in Canada, what has the Canadian Taxpayer Federation, what was the biggest success for year 2025?
Well, I love that question. I would say we got two major wins this year, right? And I love how you framed it because, it's pretty easy to get depressed, pretty easy to be pessimistic about the state of Canada, but we got two major wins. Let me start with the first one. And that was on the consumer carbon tax, right? The Liberal government's favorite tax, their consumer carbon tax, the one that you paid directly every time you went to the gas station or on your home heating, like your natural gas bill, right? And look, I think if you look back to just this year, it seemed inevitable that the carbon tax would be thrown into the dustbin, but that wasn't always the case, right? This was a decades-long fight of, ordinary citizens pushing back against the power brokers in government who wanted to carbon tax us. Even just 10 years ago, Mark, there was really only two organizations formally fighting the carbon tax. The first was the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, and the second was the Bradwall government in Saskatchewan. But in every other provinces, you either had politicians staying silent or politicians imposing carbon taxes. And of course, federally with Trudeau, when he came in, he brought in the carbon tax. But you don't even have to look a decade ago, Mark, right? In the 2021 election, all the major federal parties campaigned on a carbon tax, including the Conservatives, right? You had Aaron O'Toole, who ended up flip-flopping and even running on a carbon tax during the 2021 election. So it was a long, hard battle. The fight against carbon taxes, it's not over. But, ordinary Canadians forcing the Liberals to end their own favorite tax was a major win. And I love to see it.
That's amazing because this carbon tax has been something in my questions, I have the industrial carbon tax. I know you posted about yesterday, so we'll get into that. But before we do, I want to hear a few more things about this year. So other than the carbon tax that's gone, is there something that you could mention that would have hurt Canadians that you guys were able to stop, or at least, bring it out there so that it slowed things down for Canadians?
Yeah, we got another major win. So I mentioned the end of the Liberal consumer carbon tax, which quite frankly is certainly the biggest victory I've ever had in my career. And it was something that we fought against for more than a decade. But maybe my second biggest career a part of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation was beating back Trudeau's capital gains tax increase. right? I don't know if you remember that in budget 2024, you have the Trudeau government, Trudeau and Freeland, they bring in this capital gains tax increase, right? And what they wanted to do is they wanted to play political games. So they split the capital gains tax hike out from the budget bill because they were trying to wedge the conservatives, right? The liberals wanted to seem like the good guys fighting the class warfare, and they wanted to paint the conservatives as like the big bad guys, trying to protect the rich and powerful or whatever. So they split the bill. And what ended up happening is that the federal government, by doing that, and then parliamentary shenanigans, then parliament prorogued. But look, like the federal government never introduced the law, they never debated the law, they never passed the law, and they never proclaimed the capital gains tax hike law into law, right? So essentially, there was this issue of no taxation without representation, where this capital gains tax hike had never been passed, and yet the CRA, these unelected bureaucrats, were going to act as if the legislation had passed and take billions of dollars from Canadians illegally through this capital gains tax increase. Well, the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, we said absolutely no way. We launched a court challenge. We sued the federal government, okay, over this illegal and undemocratic capital gains tax hike. Mark, exactly 1 week after we sued the government, after we launched this court challenge, the federal government backed away. They backed down. They said, okay, fine. We're not going to introduce this capital gains tax hike this year. We'll delay it for a year. But then we just kept fighting it in the media, highlighting this court case. And eventually the government just completely ended the capital gains tax increase. Like, let me just say like how fundamental this is, because the government was essentially going to take $7 billion from Canadians through this tax hike illegally. And we said, absolutely no way. And Mark, let me just add one more thing. We're still in court. Even though the capital gains tax hike never happened, we're still in court because we want to force the precedent of no taxation without representation.
You guys are doing God's work. I appreciate you every day. That's why I wanted to have you on the show, because we want to hear from you, a lot more of you. I want to say, is there something that Canadians should be paying attention to that didn't get enough media coverage this year?
Yeah, and I think this can also go into when we talk about the future. But I think budget 2025, right? Carney's first budget. And the reason I think Canadians didn't get enough attention from it is because of what happened with the palace intrigue, right? You'll remember the same day that the budget was introduced from Carney, you had the floor crossing. And then the rest of the media cycle, the mainstream media was just talking about palace intrigue, right? Is there another floor crosser, blah, blah, blah. But in the budget, it's so damning. Like, the budget is so bad, where you have Carney, who's going to borrow $80 billion this year, thereabouts. He plans to add about $320 billion to the debt by 2030, which is twice as much debt as what even Trudeau was planning over those same years, right? But the problem is it didn't get much attention because, the mainstream media was essentially just wanted to talk about palace intrigue, about the floor crossing, about, all the political games that have been going on. So I think that's probably the biggest story of the year that didn't get enough attention. And Mark, one more thing I'm going to add on to that. Look, Carney's playing this little sleight of hand where he's talking about, the operating budget, the capital budget. Well, the parliamentary budget officer sliced through Carney's creative accounting and showed that Carney is just taking $94 billion of operating spending and sticking a capital label right on it.
Yeah, it's unbelievable, isn't it? So I'm going to get Stacey involved, but before I do, what are the odds that Mark Carney sticks to the $80 billion this year? This is a question I've been meaning to ask you. Is there a chance, or is he going way past this thing?
Man, isn't that crazy? Like, just like the fact that we're 2025 going into 2026 right now, and we have a federal government that's borrowing $80 billion thereabouts. Like, that's insane. The biggest problem that we've seen that's kind of brought us into this mess is that every year the government releases a budget, and it's essentially these fake targets because the government just spends more and more and more. Like, they can't even stay within their own, bloated spending targets. So that's a huge concern. I mean, look, it would be crazy for the government to borrow even more than $80 billion, but given the government's track record, I mean, it's totally possible.
And that's why when I go buy my coffee, which is my #1 beverage It's astronomical. And I'm like, please make it 0 billion this year so that
Hey,
coffee could just stabilize.
can I just jump in there because I want to talk about inflation, right? And this affordability crisis that we're all still going through. And I think if you talk to like any normal person outside of the Ottawa bubble, they understand that life is still extremely unaffordable. And I just want to nail home why that is, right? Like, look, taxes increase the cost of some stuff, right? Carbon taxes made gasoline, diesel, all that stuff more expensive, your home heating. But the fundamental driver of inflation is the government's printing press, okay? Is the central bank, is the Bank of Canada. And what happened during the pandemic? I don't always want to go back to the pandemic, but we have to drive this home. What happened during the pandemic was not normal, okay? The central bank printed more than $300 billion out of thin air, largely by financing Ottawa's deficits. Okay, that is the inflation tax. The more dollars that the central bank prints, the less that your dollars buy. Because think of it this way, folks, okay? The government, through the Bank of Canada, by purchasing these financial assets like government bonds, is creating new dollars out of thin air with a click of a keypad. Okay, but you can't create new farmland out of thin air. You can't create more gasoline out of thin air. You can't create more food out of thin air. So what the government did is it created the perfect storm for inflation, which is too many dollars chasing too few goods. That is the inflation tax. And honestly, I think it's probably the worst tax of them all.
I completely agree with you. I'd like to get Stacey involved in a few questions. I have tons of questions, so there's no short amount of questions. Stacey, welcome. Oh, I think she's muted or she's gone. We're going to bring Stacey back, but Canadians, they're being told that inflation and everything, all our problems that we have today are global forces and Donald Trump. But in reality, a lot of it feels self-inflicted from Ottawa. In your opinion, how much of it is global forces and Orange Man bad compared to what they're doing in Ottawa?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, look, when other countries' governments run massive deficits and print a whole bunch of money, right? Guess what? They get the same silly prize, which is more inflation. So yeah, you do see inflation in other countries because you saw massive deficits, massive money printing in other countries. But like, where does the real pain to Canadians come from? Look down the street, right? Look at Parliament Hill. Look at your provincial government. Look at your municipal government. Like, here's what I will say. Look, Trump's tariffs or anyone's tariffs are essentially a tax on your own consumers. That is what a tariff is. Okay, like economically speaking, it's a tax on your own businesses importing goods from another country, which get passed on to your own consumers. So look, if Mr. Trump, if he wants to impose tariffs on Americans, there is no reason why the government of Canada should then follow suit and impose higher taxes, i.e., knee-jerk retaliatory tariffs on Canadians. But the biggest pain that Canadians are feeling today is from our own governments. Okay, like think about it this way, folks. More than 40% of the average Canadian family's budget is going to pay to taxes to all levels of government, right? So the biggest expense for the average Canadian family is not the home they live in. It's not the food they eat. It's not the clothes they buy. It's the taxes they pay to all levels of government. Essentially take half of your paycheck, rip it, and give it away to the tax man. Because that's essentially what is going on here in Canada because of these governments, because of our municipal, because of our provincial, because of our federal governments.
Yeah, and this leads perfectly to my next question. Is there any serious effort that our government is doing right now to rein in spending, or is it all talk?
It's all talk. It's all talk. I mean, let's just look at the numbers, right? So this year, the federal government, hold on, I got some numbers in front of me here. This year, the federal government is going to spend $581 billion. $581 billion. What are you getting out of that $581 billion, folks? Like, that's question number one. But the Carney government will spend $38 billion more this year than what the government spent last year. $38 billion more. Every single year, spending is going to go up by billions of dollars. So pro tip, to Mr. Carney, to the finance minister Champagne, when you increase spending by billions of dollars every single year, you're saving money wrong, right? You're not cutting spending. Look, here's the trick that Carney's employing, which many other politicians have done. Look, they always promise you that the diet starts Monday. Well, Monday never comes. They all say, oh, we might be increasing spending this year, but don't worry, folks, in the future, we're gonna cut spending, right? Well, whenever I hear that, I just think of Charlie Brown, Lucy, and the football.
Yeah, no, totally. Oh, it looks like Stacey's back, so that's good. Here we go, Stacey, you're back. Good, good. I don't know, we lost you for a second, so I'd love to get you involved in questions in the show. We've been talking about a lot of things, how the government's definitely not cutting any of their spending. It's all talk. Oh, I think we lost. Oh, the reception's not that great. Oh, yeah, I reported it on my YouTube channel saying this sounds like a money laundering bank. And he said something like 5% of NATO spending is going to go into this bank. What's your say on that? She's cutting out, but I think she's asking a question about the new bank. Have you heard about that, Franco?
Well, I saw like some the defense bank or something like that. Ford's pushing for it to come into Toronto. To be quite honest, no, I haven't been able to look through that yet. Like, there's been a lot of other stuff that we've been diving into. So unfortunately, no, I haven't been able to go through it.
All right, Franco, let's talk about this brand new industrial tax survey from Leger that you published on your account yesterday. I love that I saw that on your account. I went through the report. I'm going to leave a link to the report for the audience to take a look at it so that they could see that if you take the unknown portion, it's like 88% of Canadians, they know that they're saying that either fully pay or somewhat pay for the industrial carbon tax. Is basically handed off to them. So that's why we're paying more at the grocery store, more for everything because of this industrial carbon tax. And everyone in Canada agrees, except for, I don't know where these 12% of Canadians that feel like the industries are paying for it. No, they're not paying anything. Well, in my opinion. And this is going to be a tough job for Mark Carney, because if affordability is number one, it's 68% of Canadians believe the number one item right now is affordability. And 88% of Canadians believe that the carbon tax is causing an affordability crisis. That is a crisis for Mark Carney, in my opinion.
Yeah, I love this poll. I love this poll. And there's a couple reasons why. Like we mentioned at the beginning of this conversation that, the consumer carbon tax is at least canceled for now, right? But the fight against carbon taxes aren't over, because Carney is now imposing a hidden carbon tax on Canadian businesses. And look, earlier on in the year when he was running for Liberal leader, when he was, running during the federal election, he was trying to claim like, oh, don't worry, folks, you won't pay this industrial carbon tax. It's just businesses, right? Don't worry. Well, I love this poll because it shows that Canadians aren't buying Carney's spin, right? Like just 12% of Canadians believe Carney's spin, that it's businesses that'll pay the cost of his industrial carbon tax. You're right. You remove the undecideds and it's like what? High 80s who say, no, businesses are going to pass on most or at least some of the cost to consumers through higher prices. Like, of course, right? Like, look, what happens when the government hammers refineries with carbon taxes? It makes your gasoline and diesel more expensive. When the government carbon taxes utilities, makes your home heating bill more expensive, right? When the government hammers fertilizer plants with carbon taxes, that increases costs for farmers and it makes your food more expensive. Look, like I love this poll because it just shows that like Canadians understand, it doesn't matter what type of lipstick Carney wants to put on his carbon tax pig. Canadians understand that carbon taxes drive up the cost of living, make everything more expensive. But hey, let's also dovetail back to the question that you asked me about, is it Canada that's hurting Canadians? Well, you know what? Like the US, President Trump, the White House, they don't impose carbon taxes on their citizens, right? So like, what does an industrial carbon tax in Canada do? Well, it pushes our Canadian entrepreneurs to cut production here and set up shop south of the border. So Carney's carbon tax is the worst of all worlds. Higher prices and fewer jobs.
You just took my next question right out of my mouth. Yeah, because as it's not just paying more for groceries and paying more for everything. It's all of the billions upon billions of dollars that are flooding out of our country because it's less competitive. Jobs, investment, capital flight. So it's a double whammy. We're getting hit from all angles. And who's going to support our economy? Is it going to be more taxes spent, more imaginary taxes? So our inflation is going to be an issue moving forwards. Under these liberals, they really just don't know how to keep, how to slow down spending. And I've always said the best way to reduce the cost of government or cost of things is to basically get out of the way. Because if they got out of the way, then our economy could flourish. And guess who gets to collect more in taxes when you have more money in your pocket, spending more money into the economy? It means they win, we win, everybody wins. But no, instead what they do is they strangle the economy, they strangle us, and we have nothing to show for it. It's so backwards in this country. It's ridiculous.
Oh, I mean, look, Canada should be the freest, most prosperous country in the entire world, right? We have the natural resources. We have the very well-educated population. There is no reason that Canada is not the most prosperous, freest country in the world, except for our governments. Ottawa has to get out of the way, right? Like put in this discriminatory tanker ban on the West Coast. They impose a no more pipelines law. They impose a consumer carbon tax, an industrial carbon tax, another hidden carbon tax on fuel regulations, right? They moved the regulatory goalposts on Energy East. They rejected the Northern Gateway pipeline. Our political system chased away, what was it, Kinder Morgan, who wanted to invest its own money to expand Trans Mountain, right? And instead, our political system chases them away. And then the federal government comes in, spends what, billions and billions of dollars on this pipeline, putting taxpayers on the hook for a cost that should have always been done by a private corporation. Like, look, what is the problem? The government, right? The government is not the solution, folks. The government is the problem. Or like, think about this new housing agency announced by Carney, as if we need more government bureaucrats to build more homes. No, we don't, right? The problem, why houses are so expensive, because it's so impossible to go through all the regulatory and tax hoops between all levels of government to actually get anything built here in Canada. And, let me go back to the tax competitiveness here just for a quick second, okay? Now, there's this very smart think tank. They're known as the Tax Foundation. Every single year, they bring their bright minds together and they do what's called the International Tax Competitiveness Index, okay? It looks at the 38 industrialized countries in the OECD. Well, guess what? Canada ranks 27th out of 38 on individual tax competitiveness. Brutal. 27th, 26 better countries than us. Okay. We rank 22nd on business tax competitiveness. On both measures, we're behind the United States. So who's really harming our economy right now?
Oh, it's incredible. They just keep doing it. But you know what? I have a question for you, Franco, about, we just get a budget at the end of the year, and that's for 2025. So what's going on here? Are we going to get a budget in the first couple of months of next year? Or are we going to start accounting at the end of each year? So they're going to spend like we've never seen before. And then all of a sudden, we're going to find out about the number at the end of the year.
Yeah, it looks like moving forward now, all the budgets are going to happen in the fall. So I don't expect us to get a budget in the spring like we have been for like the last whatever, how many years. We might get some type of budget update. But hey, Mark, I don't know if you remember this, but right after the federal election, we weren't even going to get a budget, Remember when Champagne told the media, he had like a press conference, like, probably no budget this year. Well, at the CTF, we lost our minds. Like, we went, here's another win. I mean, it's a small win because I mean the budget was so bad, but we lost our minds. They're saying, what do you mean no budget? Like, are you kidding me? We can't just go a full year without, Canadian taxpayers getting to scrutinize how the federal government is spending our money. But also too, like, how a democracy is supposed to work is we elect politicians, right? They go to Ottawa and they're supposed to vote on legislation, vote on spending. But also too, how are our MPs, our elected representatives, how are they supposed to make any informed decision on spending when they have no idea what the books look like?
Yeah, what are the chances that our credit rating agencies start downgrading Canada?
Well, Fitch, just after the budget, actually, Fitch, one of the large credit rating agencies, they didn't announce a downgrade, but they did fire a warning shot. They did. I'll try to pull the quote up, but Fitch did warn a further federal deterioration on our finances. So I think things could be getting quite bad. All of that, I think, still depends on what happens moving forward, right? Like you heard Carney talk about this spending review. At least in this budget, spending is still going up by billions of dollars every single year. So in terms of sorry, can you hear me still? I think my mic might have cut out.
No, you're still there.
We're still there? Okay, good. But what happens in terms of credit rating downgrades, that all is kind of to be seen, right? It kind of depends on what Carney's next step is.
I'd like to get Stacey involved before we go to the question period. Stacey, do you got any questions for Franco? Yep. Man, we're having trouble with Stacey. I feel so bad because she wanted
Hey, thank you, Stacey. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I'm going to leave in the comment. Once I republish this, I'll put it on my X channel, other channels. Yep.
Yeah,
I don't know if you can answer this one, Franco.
well, I'll talk about more broadly.
Go for it, Franco.
So,
She's wondering about the floor crosser situation and
yeah,
how.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'll talk more broadly about the floor crossing situation. Like one of the problems that I see federally is just that, in a democracy, it's Canadians that are supposed to be the boss, right? Well, like think about in any normal context outside of outside of our federal government, right? Like a normal business or anything like that. The boss has measures to hold its employees accountable. What measure do we have as the boss, as taxpayers, as Canadians, to hold our employees accountable, right? The federal politicians. Like what? What tool do we have? Well, every couple of years we get to cast a vote. Like that's the most important democratic accountability tool in any democracy is the ability to vote. But like, what would happen if you owned a business and you were only able to fire your employee every 4 years? Like, what do you think would happen? Well, you'd probably get a situation like you see in Ottawa or in some of the other provincial capitals, right? So I think we need more democratic tools in Ottawa to hold these politicians accountable. Look, do I think floor crossing is a legitimate thing? I think there's an argument to be made. It's been happening forever. There's some liberals that cross the floor to conservatives in the past, yada, yada. But what I think has to happen is I think there has to be recall legislation. Right. So like, think about it, right? Because if the voters, if they voted for their elected representative, their MP, and the reason they voted may not have been because of that MP, they may have been voting for the party. Right. So I think those voters in that riding should have a tool then to hold their MP accountable for floor crossing. And I think the tool that is best available would be recall legislation at the federal level.
Okay, we're going to go to Q&A. It's been 30 minutes of panel. Oh. Yeah, I agree. So that's why your work is so valuable, Franco. We need to keep our federal officials accountable. So, Franco, we're at the Q&A stage. I'm waiting for some questions from the audience, but in the meantime, let's ask. So the federal bureaucracy has exploded in size in the last decade. I believe it's up 40%. Wages are up 68%. Has Canadian services seem to be declining with all of these increases in services, and our standards of living has not improved as a result. So in your opinion, can we just start cutting and we're going to still get the same? It doesn't appear like this increase has improved our lives. That's what.
No, it hasn't. No, it hasn't. I mean, it's okay. I love this question. Okay. So the federal government, folks, in 10 years added 100,000 bureaucrats. Was there really a bureaucrat shortage in Ottawa 10 years ago? No. Okay. Ottawa was probably already bloated with too many bureaucrats 10 years ago. And then under Trudeau, they had 100,000 bureaucrats. Now the cost of the number of bureaucrats went up about 40%. Mark, the cost of the federal bureaucracy, when you look at the number, you look at the salaries, you look at the bonuses, you look at the other benefits, the cost of the federal bureaucracy went up 80% in 10 years, right? Is anyone getting 80% better services from the federal government? The only people who would answer yes to that question are the federal bureaucrats taking a taxpayer funded salary, right? But for everyone else, for all of us taxpayers, I think the obvious answer is no. And in fact, Mark, we actually asked Leger to ask Canadians if they are getting better or worse services over the last 10 years. Half of Canadians said services have gotten worse, despite the massive increase in the federal bureaucracy.
No, I totally agree with you. I got a question from the audience. Jax B395 says, Franco, how did you get the Santa hat to fit on Doug Ford's head?
Oh, so the joke here too, Mark, is that I don't know if you saw this, but we just released the taxpayer naughty and nice list, and Doug Ford topped the naughty list for this year, and I think well deserved. Like, did you know he gave himself a $73,000 raise this year? $73,000. Like, that's the average salary of a Canadian, like the average Canadian. And Ford gave it to him himself in a raise. The Ford government in Ontario also brought back the taxpayer funded pension. They brought back political welfare, right, on a per vote subsidy to Ontario political parties. So yeah, that's a great question. But I definitely think very well deserved that Doug Ford is on top of the naughty list this year.
I got another question from Marilyn. She says, question, I'm really concerned that Mark Carney is going to go after my pension. After I've worked my entire life, it's a struggle. I also feel sad for the youth that are trying to plan their future.
Yeah, well, I really feel bad about future generations. Obviously, the debt impacts us directly today, right? We talked about the inflation tax, how that makes your life more expensive. One thing we haven't talked about is just paying interest on the debt, right? Where, think about it this way, every dollar you now pay in federal sales tax goes to pay interest on the debt. Like, how insane is that? That every dollar that you're paying in federal sales tax is going to pay interest on the debt, or that the federal government is wasting more money paying interest on the debt than what it sends to the provinces in healthcare transfers. Like, it's spiraling out of control, right? So very, very concerned about today's generation, also extremely concerned about future generations. Sorry, Mark, what was the first part of that question, or the first part of that question? I do want to answer it directly.
Relating to is Mark Carney planning to go after my pension?
Right. So, okay, I think what's going on, because I've seen a lot of this, is because the federal government keeps on talking about net debt. Okay, and net debt is essentially this. It's essentially this term that allows the government to subtract the assets that it owns, so it can claim that the debt looks smaller than what it actually is. And so I don't think any politician has any intent on raiding the money out of the CPP. Like, I honestly don't think that's any of their intention. I mean, I just think the political backlash to that would be so severe, right? But what the government is doing is they're using a sleight of hand. They're using an accounting trick to try to claim that the federal government is in a better debt position than what it really is. Because when they use this term net debt, it allows them to subtract the assets within the CPP from the overall debt picture, right? So whenever you hear the government claim like, oh, we have one of the best net debt to GDP among the G7, they're being technically correct in a sense that net debt is different, but they're trying to hide the real reality of how bad Canada's debt is, right? Because obviously Canadian politicians shouldn't be able to raid the money in the CPP to pay down the debt. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to paint a rosier picture of the federal government finances than what it really is. Mark, I know that was a long-winded question, but did that make sense?
I think so, yeah. And I think that you responded by saying, no, they're not going to go after. At the same time, they're on the financial side, Canada's in financial trouble. The way that they're accounting, we might get credit downgrades, which in turn is going to cost way more for when we renew our mortgages. I'm on the mortgage side. My experience is in debt. So I know all about that. And not only that is when they're running an $80 billion deficit and they have to raise that money in the market, what happens is us mortgage people that are trying to renew our mortgages are competing with the $80 billion, which pushes up the rate for us because their debt goes first. Our debt goes after their debt, meaning we're paying more for our interest rates for our home. We're paying more for our groceries because they're causing inflation. Plus, this industrial carbon tax is flooding businesses out of our country. It's all backwards. We need it to change. And that's why we're having these discussions. Let's talk another question. This might be a shorter answer for you. Is Jim West says, if there's no spring budget, how can the government call an election?
I mean, the government just did that this year, right? In 2025. Yeah, the government just did that, right? The government called an election without a budget. I mean, the lack of democratic accountability in terms of what the government spends in taxes is getting outrageous. And that's one of the reasons that we launched that court case against the federal government that where the CRA was trying to illegally and undemocratically take billions of dollars from Canadians through a capital gains tax hike that was never passed into law.
Yeah. So I got another question is Seal here speechlessly says, hopefully I said that name correctly. I apologize. And I like this question because I'm a huge fan of Moose on the Loose. He's doing fantastic investigative journalism. I wish I could do what he does, but that's why we are all doing different things because we have different talents. But Franco, have you taken a look at Moose on the Loose's chart? He has a Moose chart that's available and that points out all of Mark Carney's conflicts of interest and how do we get it to Pierre Poilievre's team? I mean, I don't know if he's seen it, but they're right. I mean, this Moose chart. Have you seen this chart before?
No, I haven't seen it. Sorry. Yeah. I mean, I wish we had more resources so that we can all be doing that, but no, it's just not something I've seen.
Well, I might send you the chart. You should take a look. It's quite significant, the amount of work that independent journalism in this country are the ones that are going to save this country because CBC and the rest of them, they're not helping us out. All right, let's see another question here. All right. Well, there's a lot of people out there. I don't think you could see the chat, but they're just thanking you, Franco. They think that you're doing a fantastic job and they want to thank you for all the work that you've done for Canadians.
Thanks, everyone. I love that. That means a lot to me. That brightens up my day, which I need being in Ottawa with the circus in town all the time, you know?
Yeah. Here's a question. West Coast Toy Gaming says, talk about Indigenous land claims. How this could potentially destabilize the value or our real estate value across the country.
Hey, Mark. So I just want to say, we're now getting into this fight. I'm gonna direct people to the Canadian Taxpayers Federation's YouTube channel, just because we had our in-house lawyer describe the ramifications and what it means for taxpayers. So I'm actually about to go meet with our in-house lawyer, Devin Drover, who is also a part of our capital gains tax fight, to really get prepped on what this will mean for taxpayers. But for the time being, folks, if you want to know what the CTF thinks about this and like what we're going to be doing moving forward, we just posted a video yesterday on all this stuff going forward. But what I will say is I think we got to enshrine property rights in Canada. So I'll end on that, because that is something I can clearly say is like, I think we do have to push to enshrine property rights here in Canada.
Yeah. Jerry says, how can we stop them from overspending? Why do they have the right to use our tax money without consent?
Yeah, there's two ways I would say, two things I would say. So number one, there will always have to be pressure from Canadians, right? There will always have to be a cultural pressure from Canadians to be like, no, you're wasting our money. You're disrespecting how hard we work for our money, for the money we earn and the taxes we pay. Enough is enough. You have to stop. So there will always have to be a cultural element. And that's one of the things that the Canadian Taxpayers Federation is trying to do, right? To show Canadians through conversations like this, like, hey, you are getting soaked. They are wasting your money. Here's how. But the second thing is, Mark, I would say is we actually need legal protection. Okay. We need things like balanced budget laws, right? Like spending limits. And we saw this work out in places like Alberta. Remember when Ralph Klein, when he came to power in the early 90s, Alberta's budget was a mess. It was a disaster. Massive deficits, massive interest charges. Well, by 2004, you had Ralph Klein holding up that paid in full sign in Alberta, right? And one of the steps that Klein had to take was bring in these balanced budget laws, bring in these debt repayment schedules. So we need a two-pronged attack. We need this cultural push to be like, no, politicians, enough is enough. Put down the credit card, pick up some scissors. But number two, we need that type of legal protection, taxpayer protection acts, balanced budget laws, spending restrictions, things of that nature.
Yeah. So this next question is going to lead perfectly to your answer there. Is Timberman says, what's the bottom line? What can we do? How can it change?
Well, as like an individual Canadian, you got to keep getting involved. So a couple ways you can do that. Number one, please share videos like this. The more that your friends, your families know what's going on, the more people that you have in that tax fighter army, right? Like that's one way to get involved. What I would say is also a little philosophical, I guess. Why not turn to philosophy a little bit? But the other side wants you to be so pessimistic. They want you to think that things can never change for the better so that you will stop fighting. And that's really how you lose in this sport of democracy, right? Because democracy really is a participation sport. And, I've heard a lot of people, some of my close friends, they say, oh, I don't really care about politics. And you know what? I kind of get that. But the problem is that even if you don't care about politics starts to care about you. And I think people kind of learned that over the last couple of years. So you got to stay engaged. One way that you can also join, I'm just going to plug the Canadian Taxpayers Federation because that's who I'm with, right? But you can head over to taxpayer.com. One of the things that allows you to get involved in our campaigns and our fights is by just signing a petition that you care about. So for example, if you want to see the CBC completely defunded, click on our petition, sign the petition to defund the CBC, and we'll let you know when we're taking action. For example, when, calling on committee to bring in the CBC president to committee over the bonuses and all that kind of stuff. That's an example of some of the action that we take here at the CTF.
Yeah. So how can Canadians help you financially? Like, where does your money funding come from? Is it from Canadian taxpayers that donate, and how can we support you?
So all of our funding just comes from Canadians voluntarily, right? So we never will take a cent from government. We don't take money from political parties. We don't take money from unions, and we don't take money, from foreigners, right? So all of we rely fully on voluntary donations from Canadians who believe in our cause of lower taxes, less government, more government accountability. And the best way to do that is just to go to taxpayer.com and donate. And it really allows us to do the work that we do, right? I mean, we love fighting for taxpayers, but for example, to have some good lawyers on our side to sue the CRA over an illegal tax grab, like that obviously takes funds. So we're really appreciative of everyone who supports us. And it's because of you guys that we're able to do the work that we do.
Yeah. So if people don't have the financial means to do that, is there a way that they could donate their time and help your organization?
Absolutely. I mean, we totally get that, very tough times right now. The best way to get involved with the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, step number one is to go to taxpayer.com, sign one of the petitions that you're interested in, because that's how we're able to then send you the emails when we're launching an advocacy campaign against something, right? A perfect example is so for example, in Alberta a couple years ago, we were pushing for recall legislation, right? Remember we were talking about recall, how we need it federally. We're pushing for recall and referendum legislation in Alberta. And so we launched a petition. The people who signed it, they got our emails letting us know when it's time to put pressure on certain politicians so that they would keep their promise to bring in recall. So that's just a good example of how you can support the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, how you can get engaged, and it doesn't have to mean financially.
Yeah, somebody says, I donate to the Taxpayer Federation. Michelle Curfey, thank you so much.
Thanks, Michelle.
Awesome. So I have a few, we're basically running out of time here. I want to be able to have you back on for a live. I think there was a lot of value that was provided to be able to get people's questions to you. I know I have a lot of questions, so I could take up all the time, but it's more important. I make my content for the people that watch it. It's not for me. It's to get the information out to people, and that's what my job is. So maybe we can answer one more question. If I didn't get to your question, I'm going to try to tell Franco, hey, can I get you back on? And
we'll do it again.
We could do it again. I'll give people at least a week notice so that we could, and then I'll actually do a poll, like when's the best time for you guys so that you could attend and you could actually participate in the live feed with your questions. Because I know at this time, there's so many unanswered questions that we would love to get answered. And Franco, you're a wealth of knowledge when it comes to all things taxes in Canada. So I appreciate everything you do for us. Let's see if Stacey has some closing remarks for you. And then maybe you could add your closing remarks, Franco, and then we'll sign off. Let's see. Make sure that Stacey's audio is good. There you are, Stacey. Yeah, so that's what I saw too. Just in the accounting, they've listed it as an asset. No, we've seen that. And yeah, but Franco, I don't know if Franco knows, but I'm sure he's probably looked into that. And that the problem with that is it's not their money. It doesn't belong to them. It belongs to the pensioners. So for them to yeah, it's a danger. All right, Franco, any closing remarks for the audience?
Hey, I just want to say thanks, everyone. Like, I just really appreciate this. Like, this was a lot of fun. I had a good time. I hope I provided you all with some value. And like, honestly, I just want to say thank you, Stacey. Thank you, Mark, for setting this up. And folks, like, we can do this again. So if we didn't get to your questions today, happy to take them again. But hey, just one thing I want to just implant in everyone's mind. Okay, so the cost of living is out of control because the cost of government in Canada is out of control. And if that's the one takeaway that I can leave you with, then I think that's a pretty good takeaway. But other than that, folks, I just want to say thanks for hosting me. I had a lot of fun. And also too, like, hey, Merry Christmas, everyone. And I hope you all have a happy new year. And I hope we can do this chat again.
Absolutely. Merry Christmas to everybody. And I hope you have a wonderful holiday season. Take a break, relax. I know you're watching this show today, but just take care of your family and have a great holiday season. Thank you so much, Franco, for coming on to this live. Thank you very much, Stacey, for also setting us up, because I get way too busy to be able to keep up with everything. So Stacey, thank you for reaching out and getting us all together today. Stacey? All right. We'll chat soon. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, bye.